I don't enjoy this. I hate this. I never want to do, accounting, or I never want to, deal with bookkeeping and the intricacies and things like that. And that's okay. But I think a lot of times people just try to overcompensate really and try to mask that. And, you can only mask things so much. Ultimately, the truth sort of rises.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another knowledge bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. If it's your first time joining us, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell and hit that like button. This will be greatly appreciated in helping getting out this content to great leaders and great individuals like yourself. This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness. Jonathan, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on the Lead to Greatness podcast on today. What I want you to do, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to the Lead to Greatness community? Let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jonathan Rosenfeld, and professionally, I am a personal injury attorney in Chicago, Illinois. I am the founder and the managing attorney at Rosenfeld Injury Lawyers. As the name would suggest, we handle all personal injury type cases, everything from, bump and bruise type auto accidents to much, much more significant injuries, catastrophic injuries, wrongful death involving, anything, medical institutions, trucking accidents, you name it. So we really handle a broad type of case. And I've been an attorney for, I don't know, over 20 years. I don't even remember. I enjoy it tremendously. It really resonates with me. It suits my personality. And outside of profession, my vocation, I'm married. I've got two fantastic kids.
Awesome.
I like to do anything outside, and I got a busy, full life.
Wow. How did you get to become an attorney? How did you get into law?
Well, I was always a very obedient child. I say that with a little, tongue in cheek action here, but I was in college, and my parents, I wound up studying journalism in college. My parents said, "Well, that's great. What are you going to do now?" And I said, "I don't have any idea."
Wow.
And they said, "Well, how about going to law school?" And I said, "Okay, I'm not having any other offers or anything, no one's knocking down my door.
Right.
So may as well do it." And, anyway, I wound up going to Chicago Kent College of Law in Chicago, and
Wow.
I was not super crazy about law school, but I did see it through. And, I'm very happy and grateful that I did that because, frankly, the practice of law is really different than sitting in a class and talking about things in a theoretical sense. So,
Right.
Looking back on it, obviously it wasn't fun every day, as most things are, but it was definitely worth it.
Wow. And that's pretty amazing because here it is. You went to law school, and not only did you become a lawyer, but now you're an entrepreneur of your own law firm. Let's talk about that. What inspired you to begin this journey and why?
Well, obviously when I started practicing law, I was working for different law firms. I've always sort of done the personal injury type work. It just really resonated with me. I love the fact that, I could meet with someone one day, unfortunately after an accident, obviously they were usually in pain, they were distraught, whatever. But my job was to really see them through their difficult times and to really, see them through towards the resolution of a case, either by settlement or trial. And it doesn't sound that complicated, the way like that, but compared to other types of law where it's just sort of like a nonstop monotony of just billing out time and just sort of going and going and going. In the field of personal injury, there's sort of a beginning and a middle and an end. There's always a goal. Okay. And the fact that there was a goal in mind and it was a tangible thing, and, it's just something that everyone could sort of grasp onto, that's sort of really what sort of set me on my path. So I started working at different law firms. I learned quite a bit. I learned a lot about, the law. I learned about how to work with people. And I learned also really what I didn't like about those jobs and
Mm,
those law firms. And a lot of that was, the structure, how it was set up. Obviously, when you're an employee, you have to follow, there has to be some structure. You have to follow the chain of command to a certain extent. But
mm,
I just didn't like how, I was sort of forced to do things in a certain way. I thought that there were some inefficiencies out there, and I really wanted to sort of do things on my own. And so after working for different law firms for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, I wound up venturing on my own and really haven't looked back.
Well, I like that. And I don't want us to miss this lesson. You said you worked in law for other law firms for about 3 years before you started your own practice. And I believe that, when you're doing that, working for someone else, you're learning the ins and outs of, how the systems. And I'm pretty sure during the process, there was systems that you say, you know what, we're not going to do this. But there were also good things, that you've seen and you say, you know what, when I start my firm, this is the direction that I'm going to go in. Let's talk about the downside to it, some of the right now, what advice would you give to the entrepreneur that's looking to expand their business, and what's some things to stay away from?
I think you got to sort of find really what works for you.
Mm,
I'm a big, big believer and big fan in sort of playing into your strengths and,
mm,
recognizing also not what you're good at, but also what you're not very good at.
mm,
And, I think that a lot of people, there's some pressure out there to sort of be, hey, I'm great at everything.
mm.
The truth is that most people they're not great at everything. You're very lucky if you're great at a handful of things.
Absolutely.
And, I recognized that, I enjoyed, interacting with people. I love, you know, uh, meeting with clients. I love taking depositions. I love the litigation. I love the trial. I'm not a big fan of sitting at a desk, doing paperwork, writing, which is that is an essential component of,
Absolutely.
personal injury law. But those are things that I'm very fortunate that I tend to delegate that type of work
Mm,
to other attorneys who I work with, and so I can focus on the things that you know that I enjoy and that I really think that I'm good at.
okay.
And I think that really really early on because I guess for better or worse when when you're getting a C in a class, you may disagree with the grade, but that's feedback that you may not be particularly good at that. And I think that's
Yes.
okay. I think you have to accept some of those, you know, f- some of those faults and some of those weaknesses, and you just have to minimize them and maximize what you're good at.
Mm. I love that, and you said some things that I think we should maybe not dig into, but just visit a little bit the aspect you were saying, because even the school system, what the school system teaches us, it's like if, like, say for instance, you may be great in math or English, but you may be horrible at science. It does, it's one of those things where there may not be an interest in that science area, and I think a lot of times we take that mentality to our adulthood, and we look at ourselves like this. And I believe, I want to get your perspective on that, but I believe that a lot of time that's why we kind of feel it's like when we are not good at something, it's like we want to hide it. We we don't want nobody to know that we're not that good in that area, and we're trying. And from what you're saying, and I totally agree, you're doing yourself a disservice, just, I mean, especially when you have a company, just put somebody in that position to do what what you're not good at. Hire somebody to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a tendency to be, I don't know if it's a macho thing or what it is, but
Yeah.
people have a tendency to, try to cover up their faults, their weaknesses, and
Mhm.
I'm no different than everyone else. I'm not perfect. I'm not excellent at everything that I do. A lot of
Absolutely.
things that I do, I probably have to put quite a bit more work in than other people, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I just think that if you just keep grinding away and sort of, I'm not saying that just throw the towel in and everything by any means, but I think you got to sort of recognize, you know, be real clear with yourself and be like, hey, I don't enjoy this. I hate this. I don't want to, I never want to do, accounting, or I never want to, deal with, the bookkeeping and the intricacies and things like that. And that's okay. But I think a lot of times people just try to overcompensate really and try to mask that. And it really, you can only mask things so much, ultimately, the truth sort of rises to the surface.
Yes. Wow. Each entrepreneur, anyone, even if you're doing things well, or you're doing well in what you're doing, I think, we should all take that moment and really assess where we are, because, sometimes we can get caught up in those things because of who we are. I want you to talk about an error that you made early on in entrepreneurship, and how did you recognize that, and how was it corrected? Or are you still dealing with it?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, everything's just always evolving and changing,
Yeah.
and there's no such thing as being, static or being complacent, because if you are, that you're just going to get, the guy down the street's going to be, he's just gunning for you.
Right.
I think the biggest thing that, that I've learned is that probably there's just, there's ups and downs with everything. And
Absolutely.
the people who tend to be successful are the people who tend to stick it out and, ride those, waves up and down, and, try to make the best of it and navigate around things.
Right.
But, a lot of times, you look at someone and be like, oh, that guy, that woman, they're, gifted or whatever it is. They have it easy.
Right.
And I don't think most people realize how much work really successful people put into
Absolutely.
whatever it is, whether it's sports or business or anything. Um, it's a lot more work, and it's a lot more just sort of old fashioned, grinding than, people recognize. I think today's society is sort of really, I don't know, focused on the quick wins,
Yeah.
easy wins. And
Absolutely.
I just don't think that really exists a whole lot.
Yeah. You mentioned the word success. What is your definition of a successful business?
Well, obviously it depends on the person. I mean, there's people who run, nonprofits that are fantastically successful,
Mm.
and there's other people who run very, very, successful, lucrative businesses,
Right.
and they're not happy, and they have problems, and they have, headaches and huge turnover and everything else. So it just depends on what metrics you're using for that. I mean, one of the things that I use is how happy are you at the end of the
Yeah.
day, or, not, it's not every day, but at the end of the day, at the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, are you sort of the beating your head against the wall, or are you just sort of being like, what, I'm feeling pretty good about this. And,
Mm.
I like how things are going. And,
Yeah.
you know, and that's sort of the metric that I use.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that there are days where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just, difficult, and I've sort of had it or whatever. But, that's how I look at it. I just think that, you have to set your own parameters, your own goals, and just sort of, look where you're at the time.
Yeah. I like that, because I actually had a conversation with someone recently about what we call success. Because, but I mean, there's celebrities that has committed suicide. There's celebrities that strung out on drugs, and some of struggling in and out of whatever. So we still throw this terminology around successful, and my thing is like, if that's success, I don't want it, and I think we need to really revisit what success is for each and every one of us. And you mentioned that about, success, what makes you, happy, what brings, the joy out of you. I think there are so many unhappy people.
Look, I mean, the world's full of miserable people. I mean,
Right.
most people are, stressed out. They're,
Um,
sort of living, paycheck to paycheck. They
yeah.
have no control over their lives.
Mm,
A lot of people are just unhealthy. I mean, there's a whole variety of reasons.
absolutely.
I think all those things sort of, compound on themselves.
Mm,
And, if one area of your life is sort of out of whack, it's really hard to have the others compensate for it. So,
absolutely.
I think that generally though, I think most people are unhappy because they just really have no control, They don't have control over their business. They have no control over their finances. They have no control over their health, and those are, big parts of your life. And if one of those isn't working, yeah, you're probably not happy.
Yeah. You think it's a lot of comparison going on or just misdirection? What's your thought on that?
Well, look, I mean, everyone pulls up, Instagram or whatever,
Yeah.
and you see all these people driving, these fancy cars, wearing jewelry, and
Yeah.
they're skinny and super strong, and
Yeah.
and that's not reality. I think, I don't know, man, it's not my reality. I can tell you that,
Absolutely.
but maybe sometimes people just need to take a break from some of those things, because I agree. It's, not to say that there's not some super positive things with social media. It certainly helps people connect.
Yeah.
There's a lot of support people can get out of it. But the truth is that most people don't use social media for that. They
Yeah.
use social media to look at pictures of, big cars, fancy houses, and they're setting themselves up for disappointment. So,
Absolutely.
I don't really, I'm probably as guilty as anyone. I'll scroll through, Instagram or something like that if I'm waiting,
Yeah.
because God forbid I should sit for, 2-3 minutes without doing something. But the truth is that if you take a break from that, you probably will feel better.
Absolutely. And I think, man, I think that's really good that's good advice for anyone, for entrepreneurs, for leaders. Someone may be starting a business right now and they're looking at someone else social media so-called overnight success. And what's so funny about that? It's funny. I don't even know whether to use the word funny or what. I don't know, but it's one of the things I think about this, and I have the opportunity. I have the opportunity to interview entrepreneurs, great successful leaders every week, and I never once heard the success story of the overnight success. Now, this is what I have heard. I heard of someone may have launched a business and in 2-3 years, the business done well. But when I start asking questions, they talk about the other 6 businesses that failed in the last decade before they got to this 2-year success. And I think a lot of times that overnight success is being pulled from, those moments when, you failed 10 times in this one time, but that one time you finally got it right. The whole concept of the business, you got it right. And you go into it, and in 2 years, you made your first 7 figures or whatever. And we tell that story because it sounds really good. I mean, it's good for social media, but I mean, yeah, it's that reality of like what business really is. And you have a lot of entrepreneurs giving up after 6 months of their business because in 6 months they haven't took off yet, and they just giving up and quitting. I mean, I want you to speak to that individual, speak to that leader, that entrepreneur that may have been in it for 6 months to a year, and they want to quit grinding right now. What would you say to that individual?
And again, this sounds awfully cold, and I don't mean for it to sound cold, but if you are throwing in the towel after 6 months, maybe you should not be an entrepreneur. Not, and again, I'm not saying this in a critical sense or
Absolutely.
anything, but not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Not everyone's cut out, to wake up on a Saturday or Sunday and, if there's an issue or something with their business, deal with it. God bless those people. Go work at a 9-to-5 job and come home and be happy and enjoy your life. And I wish you the best.
Yeah.
But most entrepreneurs, at least that I know, they work so hard. They work all the time, and they do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Absolutely.
And so if that's something that appeals to you and that's, sort of your temperament and personality, go for it. But if it's something where you're like, you know what, I don't want to ever work on the weekends. I don't ever want to, do this or do that. You know what? Maybe you should, again, just check in with yourself and look elsewhere.
And for that individual that is grinding, what areas would you suggest business owners invest in?
Oh, I think sort of sales always drive the business. And, it doesn't matter if you're selling, locks, or if you're selling, bagels, or if you're selling, a service, you always have to be selling. And, I always encourage people, and I do this myself, just whether it's, putting, it's not just money, but just invest time into that. Because ultimately, if you can, get business, you can hire people to maybe do some work on the business. And I think most people, a lot of times, they sort of lose sight of that, where they figure, oh, I'm gonna put a sign on the door and say, hey, I'm a bagel maker, whatever it is. And the truth is that that's great, you have the sign up, but go out and do some marketing, go out and spend time on your website, go out and knock on doors, pound some pavement. And so I just think that people need to really invest time into the front end of their business, in terms of getting people in the door, getting the phone to ring, and hopefully the rest will sort of take care of itself.
Even in that process, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders that when they're doing that and when they're grinding to that magnitude, they have some type of system, and they also have some type of ritual or some type of routine. Do you have any daily routine that makes you feel strong about committing to it?
I think one of the things that I do every day is I have a routine. Sometimes people don't even have a routine. Okay. So, I tend to get up early during the week. It's not, I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I usually tend to get up around 4:30, 5 in the morning. I'll check my email.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Why 4:30?
Why? Because it's time where things are generally a lot quieter. Once, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning starts going, my phone's typically a lot busier. My emails start coming in a lot faster. And, it's just something that it's just quiet time, frankly. And, and then I'll work out, I'll spend time working out, and then, at least I've accomplished one thing. That during the day, after, if I do that, it's like at least a small win. And it sort of sets the momentum for the day.
Yes. And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.